immigration campaign, the anti-diversity program curbs, the ICE raids, all of these are part of Trump's MAGA policy, Make America Great Again stance, which elected him to power. How is he going to strike a balance now between not upsetting some of the critics of his regime, and while also trying to curb all the challenges that come from immigrants who haven't gone through legal vetting processes?
Yeah, Kriti, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show. Very relevant and good question that you have raised. Balancing out is an issue which only Donald Trump has to decide and take a call. But my take on the entire issue is that resorting to off the cuff, an abrupt decision to send back illegal migrants to the parent countries in a very haphazard manner, it actually speaks volumes about having gone into the details and the consequences of undertaking such a mission. While it may be good to Donald Trump and his team for the sake of the election manifesto that he had given during his campaigning, but a thing which has been building up for past several years, more than 100 years or 200 years, if somebody tries to remedy the challenges overnight, then it is definitely going to cause a lot of resistance. And therefore, I would recommend that it should be studied in detail, and the decision matrix has to be evolved in a manner that it is comprehensive, it is holistic, and not haphazard. When I say this, what I mean is that illegal immigration takes place because of certain lacunas in the existing structure, existing policy. First and foremost thing is the entire mission has to be divided into a short, medium, and long-term spectrum of activities, and different themes have to be identified, different levels have to be identified. In doing so, the correct objective has also to be crystallized. Only then they will be able to address the issue in a holistic manner and in a professional manner. So at the moment, what is happening is whether they have gone through this process or not, one really doesn't know. But what it appears was all was normal till 20th of January 2025, and come Donald Trump in his 2.0, things seems to have taken a very abnormal trajectory, wherein it is going to add on to the turbulence which USA is facing. My recommendation would be slow down, calm down, think it over, take a pragmatic approach to the entire issue, see who are the affected people, and study the consequences of sending them in this manner. It is going to cause, today you have Minneapolis people who have come on the streets. I think a month and a half or 2 months back, there are 7 million. 7 million people, around 70 lakh people of US had come on the street for different purposes and reasons. One of them happened to be this illegal immigrants. So therefore, it will do them good if they take a very mature and responsible kind of action in a systematic manner, not in a haphazard manner that they have decided because it was given in the election manifesto. Therefore, they have to complete and tick mark the point, ballpark point, and deem it as completed. It is not possible to do that. It will be unnecessarily putting USA as a superpower into a huge complex kind of a situation which will become difficult for his follower, and it will carry on with the baggage which is creating now without any immediate solution. Back to
Major General, also throw some light on how these anti-immigration programs are going to affect the small businesses in the US and eventually its economy.
Look, another very practical question. Good thing. Today, America is surviving on a bloated, I would say, inflated kind of a living style. When I say bloated or inflated kind of a living style, you simply check the salary packages. The salary package for a particular job, which is much, much lesser in countries like India and elsewhere in Southeast Asia and East Asia, it is almost triple the salary that these people are getting this side of the world towards Eastern Hemisphere when you compare with the USA. When they have that kind of a living standard, they will be dependent on a secondary and tertiary kind of, people who support them in the domestic help, in the maintenance of, call it plumber, electrician, carpenter, blacksmith, or this small little work, and maintenance, housekeeping, transportation, taxi drivers, etc., etc. Who are the people manning this kind of job profile in USA? These are the immigrants. You go to the Bay Area and you interact. Every taxi driver, either he is from South Asia or the global South, or there are far and few who are from USA itself. And even if they are there for part-time job, or students particularly, when they are studying in university, they find some time for some extra earning, they add on to the bucks in your kitty, and they come and do the job of a taxi driver. That is for a very, very limited time.
In fact, Sudhakarji, I'd like to interrupt you there. It's not just these small businesses. Tech giants like Apple and Google, you must have read, have also issued advisories to their employees not to travel abroad due to these, US immigration crackdown and the curbs and on the H-1B, other visas. So it's not just the small businesses. Almost everybody is worried with these measures of Trump.
I'm totally with you, absolutely spot on. It's not only the small businesses, even the big businesses also.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about the illegal immigrants. When you talk about illegal immigrants, what it means is that their documentation is incorrect, their bona fides are doubtful, therefore they are being called as illegal immigrants as per the law of the land. So once they have been declared, have they been declared as illegal immigrants? I have my doubts. Because it is in one sweep of the pen, one flash of the pen, the executive order has been signed. Anyone and everyone, touching the bottom line parameters for the police people or the enforcement agency, whoever is coming nearer to the bracket, they are being herded up and sent across. This is the impression one is getting sitting thousands of kilometers away. It gives a feeling that adequate homework has not gone in, because this itself is a very laborious process, and there is a high percentage of the immigrants, and they are not only the low class businesses which are impacted, even the high tech and technical behemoths, they are also more than adequately going to suffer if such kind of measure is taken. Because many of the people who do not have H-1B visas, who come back to country after 2 years for stamping, they also will fall under the bracket of the illegal immigrant, because the documents do not support their continued stay in USA.
Right.
So once they are not available, they will be creating a kind of a vacuum or void in the performance or in discharging the mandate of a technical cycle. If a product has to be developed, the product development, it goes through a spectrum of different levels of participation, of different qualified engineers. Some may be PhDs, some may be non-PhDs, some may have some practical experience on ground, some may be based on H-1B visas, some may have the green card holders. It's a conglomerate of different kinds of people. Amongst them, if you start pick and choose and start, singling out the H-1B visa, essentially, I personally feel it is basically to target the Indian community. I'm sorry I'm making this statement, but it is based on my assessment. Because
China.
70% of the people in USA, the illegal immigrant they're talking of, or the immigrants they're talking of, or the Indian diaspora, they belong to India. So therefore, if you want to lose out these people, do you have people in USA who are qualified and experienced to handle, be it the high-tech or be it the low-tech kind of jobs? I don't think so. USA has got a culture of 40% in office and 60% outdoor. Most of the time they are doing busy in outdoor activities. Do they have that kind of temperament and focus and resolve to go in for these research-oriented developmental activities. They are the pioneers of all the technical supreme products which are being produced in
Well,
the world.
Sudhakarji, I'm sure even Trump and his administration is aware of that, at least. But I request you to stay on, and we'd like your opinion going forward as well. Viewers, moving on, let's tell you that victims of late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have expressed anger and frustration after the U.S. Justice Department released a long-awaited set of Epstein-related records that were heavily redacted, with pages blacked out and photos censored. Many said the disclosures failed to deliver transparency or accountability. Lawmakers echoed that outrage, with Democrats accusing the Trump administration of controlling the release and fueling suspicions of a high-level cover-up. The removal of at least 16 files from the Justice Department's website, including an image reportedly showing U.S. President Donald Trump, intensified that criticism. State Democratic leader Chuck Schumer warned that the public may be seeing only a fraction of what is being withheld. The Justice Department later defended retracting some files, but critics say the damage to trust is already done. Meanwhile, people in New York have voiced a mix of frustration and apathy after the release of the files. Let's in fact listen into some of the statements that are coming up.
You know what? I sort of glanced at it. I'm sort of over it. I understand people need to be held accountable, but it's. I mean, what are we going to do with all this information? There are thousands and thousands of pictures I'm sure they're going to have to go through. With the what are we going to do with the?
Obviously, some of the famous people we knew have been pictured with Epstein. We already know of their relationship, so that hasn't really changed anything. But it hasn't answered the length of what has been going on behind the scenes.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious to me that the delay had everything to do with Trump's Justice Department to redact anything and everything that would tell the truth about Trump and the files. So I think I'm not surprised. Every hour, every day, every week of the delay was to make sure that nothing in there would be known public about Donald Trump.
All right, moving on, viewers, let's track the news that's coming in from Australia. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has ordered a review into the police and intelligence services, where his government would try to examine whether or not these services are properly equipped in terms of structure and arrangements to ensure complete safety to its citizens. This comes after the Bondi Beach brutal mass shooting that happened last week on December 14 during the Hanukkah celebrations. A father-son duo, allegedly inspired by the Islamic State ideology, carried out the shooting, killing 15 people and wounding dozens others. According to official reports, one of the shooters, who was the son, identified as 24-year-old Naveed, was investigated back in 2019 over radicalization charges, but was released shortly as the authorities claimed he did not pose a threat. His father, 50-year-old Sajid Akram, was the other shooter. He was also questioned by the intelligence service at that time. Later, he still managed to obtain a gun license, which allowed him to own 6 rifles. The Australian Prime Minister has raised alarms over these security lapses in the country's intelligence services. Meanwhile, residents of Sydney gathered earlier today to collectively commemorate the tragic incident, lighting candles and marking a day of reflection to honor the people who lost their lives last Sunday. All right, and I request Sudhakarji to join us back into the discussion here. Major General, you would recall that yesterday only we were having this discussion where I asked you about a possible lack of intel, and then this update coming in from Australia where Anthony has, Albanese has ordered for a review of the intel and police force. Would you say that Australia, which is a developed nation with a population of only 20 million, or is it 20 million? Yeah, about 20 million, would lack manpower for its intelligence and police force?
Yeah, Kriti, much against the orientation of your question, I would say this is a very mature step, responsible step taken by the Prime Minister of Australia, in my opinion. Why am I saying this is that every nation which goes through a thing like a carnage, as it happened in Bondi, iconic beach, would do well you try to root out the cause of the problem. When you try to root out the cause of the problem, then because he's addressing the disease, not the symptom. So when you address the disease, a holistic kind of approach has to be adopted. When a holistic kind of approach is to be adopted, then one needs to take a long-term measure. And that long-term measure, I'm glad, because in such kind of situation, whenever it crops up, it can happen anyway. First thing to do is to contain the situation. Second thing to do is to counter it effectively and neutralize. And third is to have a long-term measure to contest it in a persistent manner so that you prevent a recurrence of these kind of things in future. Keeping this as the paradigm of guideline, I think the Prime Minister of Australia is on the right lines. He's taking the right kind of step. It's a very mature and responsible step wherein he's not only looking at the current practices but also looking at the existing structure and the deficiencies therein. And he is taking steps to identify these deficiencies and address them in a holistic manner so to plug the gap. So if it does that, not that 100% surety will be there to prevent recurrence, because the terrorism is such an act. If you devise something, evolve something today, some strategy, they will actually, circumvent that particular path or approach of the government and start coming up with something new. So it has to be a dynamic process, it has to be a ever-evolving process, and it must be a continuous process of revisiting the strategy which they are adopting now. It is not going to come into existence or come into effect overnight. It will take some time. But in the meantime, it will do good to Australian government if they also adopt some kind of measures to contain and counter. When I say contain, what it means is there are only 2 terrorists who have come to notice. There are only few countries which have been identified, dots have been joined. Maybe, for all you know, the name of ISIS itself should actually, throw up red herring. It is a transcontinental kind of a caliphate in the emergence. It is likely to grow in times ahead. Therefore, there is a requirement to go in for the global effort, and not alone Australia will be able to address it in a comprehensive manner. My only recommendation, very strong recommendation, is along with Australia, it's about time the global order also sits down, joins the head, finds a common strategy to counter it effectively and stop this menace in the world order. Back to you, Preeti.
So you'd say that it's better late than never, because earlier as well, the son who was the shooter was held for anti-radicalization, for being radicalized. He was held in 2019, and his father was quizzed back then also. And even after that, he's gone on to procure 6 rifles. So clearly, would you say then that the gun laws also are riddled with several loopholes?
Absolutely. You see, in United Nations, with your journalistic career, you would have come across, you see, there are many agreements which have been signed by the members of United Nations. One of the agreements is to prevent smooth flow of illegal lethal weapon systems. I'm forgetting the acronym. It is already in place. It came into existence sometime in 2005, took shape in 2015. It's already being applied across the board, but in a selective manner, in fits and starts. So therefore, there is a requirement to make it coherent and consistent. So flow of illegal weapons. If they have spotted 6 weapons, where did they come from? Australia, as on today, is one of the best countries which has got very stringent laws as far as the gun culture is concerned. Despite that, how did these 6 weapons, if 6 weapons have come, I'm very sure there are 600 more in hiding at different places. Therefore, the ecosystem has to be busted by the security apparatus. Only then, it requires a kind of a sustained effort by the government of Australia to actually bring it to some kind of a viable terminal end. Otherwise, this will keep recurring time and again.
All right. Thank you very much once again, Major General, for joining me in this discussion. And it's a pleasure to have you. And with that, viewers, we're now going to move on to some news from North Korea, where the country is saying that Japan's nuclear ambitions must be prevented at any cost after a Tokyo official reportedly suggested the country should possess atomic weapons. According to Pyongyang, the remark showed Tokyo was openly revealing their ambition to possess nuclear weapons and going beyond the red line. Meanwhile, the US State Department called Japan a global leader in promoting nuclear non-proliferation in what appeared to be a warning against the Asian country's potential move to obtain such weapons. North Korea is believed to possess dozens of nuclear warheads and has repeatedly vowed to keep them despite a raft of international sanctions, saying it needs them to deter perceived military threats from the United States and its allies. And I request Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who's a journalist at the Korea Herald, to join me in this discussion. He joins us from Seoul in South Korea. Doctor, how would you respond to the claims that are coming in from North Korea over Japan procuring, heading the nuclear way, if at all, given that North Korea itself is heavily nuclear powered?
Yes, you correctly pointed out, Kriti, that those regimes like North Korea, whose sovereignty, or you can say the regime politics, rely heavily on this nuclear politics, must not comment on countries like Japan, who had been very responsible since last couple of decades. And especially if you see the Japanese three non-nuclear principles that they rely always and that they uphold, this comment should not be taken seriously in the global world, especially among those who are peace-loving countries and who want a denuclearized world. And as you said, that a country like North Korea, they have themselves have violated the UN resolution on nuclear things since 2006. And even recently this year in September, their vice minister has said that it is easily justified, and North Korea justifies the upholding and having this nuclear weapon. So this comment is, coming at a time that is, the timing of this comment is very important, because it has nothing to do just with North Korea, but the regional security, because the way China is expanding the nuclear arsenal, the way Russia has been doing the partnerships with the North, and the Taiwan contingency. So from Japan perspective, I think they want to have a kind of deterrence. And just last week, there was an approval from the US side on a nuclear submarine when it comes to South Korea. So that is why I think Japan wants to take these all things in reference to have a deterrence. Yeah.
Sure. And how, do you see, Japan taking this step towards nuclear energy? Particularly, it's the first one after the, Fukushima nuclear energy reactor.
Yes, Japan wants to leverage the geopolitical and existing and changing scenario, we should say, in the geopolitical arena of East Asia and the Northeast Asia, and that is why Japan wants to use it, and they want to use it when it comes to talks with the US, and they want to get the leverage of the US-Japan alliance, and this is the right time, I think, for them to bring something on the table. And South Korea also would not be opposing such moves, because this area needs to be stable from US, Japan and South Korea perspective.
All right. Well, thank you for your comment there, but do stay on with me as I move ahead and request your opinion. Viewers, Egypt and Russia are raising alarm over rising conflicts across Africa. The issue was discussed at the Russia-Africa Partnership Forum in Cairo. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow is helping African nations strengthen defense capabilities. He said the focus is on countering internal and external threats, especially terrorism. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati warned about escalating conflicts and terror risks on the continent. He called for peaceful solutions and rejected foreign intervention in African affairs. The Russia-Africa Partnership was launched in 2019 during Egypt's African Union presidency. The first summit was held in Russia's city of Sochi. Let's listen into what Russian Foreign Minister and Egyptian Foreign Minister have said.
Как постоянный член Совета Безопасности, Россия вносит весомый вклад в регулирование текущих и предотвращение новых конфликтов в Африке. Всецело разделяем фундаментальный для африканцев принцип африканским проблемам африканское решение. как и 65 лет назад, выступаем надежным партнером наших друзей в отстаивании ими суверенитета с опорой на собственные силы. Считаем недопустимой линию некоторых стран и военно-политических блоков, представляющих мировое меньшинство, на втягивание региона в конфронтационные геополитические авантюры. Это противоречит задаче обеспечения самостоятельного развития и процветания.
تتابع مصر بقلق بالغ تصاعد التوترات الدولية وتنامي النزاعات المسلحة والتهديدات الإرهابية في بعض مناطق القارة الإفريقية، لما لذلك من آثار مدمرة على استقرار دول القارة ونموها الاقتصادي. وفي هذا السياق تدرك مصر الأهمية البالغة لتسوية النزاعات بالطرق السلمية ورفض التدخلات الخارجية التي تفاقم الأزمات بدلاً من.
And let's now move ahead and track some news from South Korea. Viewers, South Korea's consumer agency says that it would order SK Telecom to compensate 58 users who filed a class action against the company over a recent hacking incident. The agency says it decided at a meeting to order the company to pay each applicant 100,000 won worth of combined cash points and mobile phone bill discounts. The government-run Personal Information Protection Commission announced the punishment in a statement, blaming the company for neglecting its duty to take safety measures and for delays in notifying the leak to customers. According to the consumer agency, the company's systems were in a very weak condition that allowed outside users to gain access to its internal intranet. There was no password or safety measures taken to protect its services, while operating systems were outdated without the latest security updates. And I request Dr. Sanjay Kumar to join us back in the discussion here. Dr. Kumar, now SK Technologies was also, fined with about $1.5 billion, I believe, and if it's going to go ahead with these payouts, how does this affect the company's balance sheets? Because I think the payout amount is exceeding its profit in 2024.
Yes, especially the company has agreed. I mean, they have not agreed to pay to the compensation, but they have admitted that there was some flaws from their end too because of this data leak. And but the company cannot overlook it because almost 23 million people have been affected by this in Korea, and the entire population of Korea is 5.51 million. So almost half of the population have been affected, and there is a lot of hue and cry. You might be aware about the Kupang incident also, which is ongoing these days. So the agency here in this case had been investigating the matter, and they had done some hearing in July and August as well. And based on that, they have come up with that. And as you correctly mentioned, that it's around 1.5 billion or 1.6 billion dollars closely it is going to be. So if agency implements it, and if it comes into action and it is accepted by the SK management, they will have to pay the almost 100,000 Korean won, which equals to almost $67 to every individual, and that would be a huge amount. Their balance sheet can be in limbo and in trouble. So the SK authorities are also right now, they are in wait and watch mood, and they are really evaluating what to do next. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kumar. That's all the time that I have in this discussion. But thank you for joining us. And with that, viewers, that's a wrap on this edition of the World Report. But do keep watching NewsX World.
in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
And joining me in this discussion is Professor Wesleyan Popovsky, who is teaching at the Jindal Global Law School. He's the Vice Dean there, and he joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us in this discussion. Professor, now the US has mooted for direct talks between Russia and Ukraine in the latest round of talks that are going to be held at Miami just in some time. Do you think that is a plan that could yield the results that is intended?
I don't think so. It's not new. There were those suggestions all the time over the last 11 months. They produced very little. There were direct talks in Istanbul, if we remember back in the summer and before that several times, but all they produced was exchange of prisoners of war, which is a minimal kind of negotiations, and it always happens in every war. And that's all that the Russians and Ukrainians directly between them could agree with. So I don't expect much this time. It's another round of the same useless negotiations. Dmitriev will tell the Americans that Russia will offer economic benefits, access to the Arctic. They can offer half of the Siberia to the Americans to please Donald Trump. That means nothing, zero. Because these people, Witkov, Kushner on one side, Dmitriev on another side, are corrupted officials. They love money. They will give each other some chocolate, some gifts, some caviar, some paintings, whatever, but that means nothing for the people in Ukraine who die and suffer every day. So another useless, I would even not watch what they will tell tomorrow. This is a useless round of negotiations until the administration in Washington realizes that together with the Europeans and with the Ukrainians, they need to be serious. They need to put real pressure on Russia to accept to a ceasefire first and foremost. And during that ceasefire, effectively, these were the previous, the initial stand of Donald Trump administration was ceasefire, either 30 days or unlimited as Ukrainian. And after the meeting in Anchorage in Alaska, Donald Trump dropped that. He get corrupted. He wants presents from Putin. He wants money. And the same, Putin expects Americans to give him something, mostly Donbass, and no security for Ukraine. And that's why for the last 7-8 months, we go around with zero progress. The full blame goes to incompetent corrupted Trump administration, and obviously to the aggressor and war criminal Vladimir.
Professor, then what's really going to push Russia to come at some kind of consensus? The sanctions threat alone has not worked. European Union's push has not worked.
Well,
will Russia stop unless its maximalist demands are met? Because it's not ready to budge at all on any demand, not ready to concede anything.
Well, it will work if there are global sanctions, not only European. If everybody in the world stop trading with Russia, including India, including China, including all the global south.
But how likely is that? Do you think India, China...
That's unlikely because they don't do it. But if you ask me what will work against Russia is global sanctions, like they did work against Saddam Hussein when all the countries in the world imposed sanctions against Saddam Hussein in 1990 when he invaded Kuwait. Only that will change the equation here, because if half of the world continues to buy Russian oil and gas, Putin will have the money to buy weapons from Iran, from North Korea, buy soldiers even from North Korea, and continue the war. Global sanctions on Russia is the solution here. Again, unlikely because of the governments in Beijing, in Delhi, and in the global south. I'm very direct here. Europeans do what they can do. for the last 4 years. Americans, I already discussed, and I don't want to discuss anymore Donald Trump. That's what will change the question. I'm answering your question.
Right, sure. But for that to happen, some other nations would probably have to sell oil, gas to these importing nations at a much lower rate. Only then would they shift away from buying from Russia to, some better negotiators.
Everybody needs to pay the price. My country, Bulgaria, stopped buying Russian oil and gas. The first winter was not easy. However, we survived. Nobody died. There was enough electricity. There was enough oil and gas from elsewhere. There are many suppliers of oil and gas. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Venezuela. You have many, many supplies you can buy from. You don't need, and even less, you need to then re-export the Russian oil and gas. Why they do that, I have no idea. So basically global sanctions on buying Russian oil and gas.
All right, sure.
We've ended this war by now.
Okay. Well, thank you for your opinion, but do continue to stay on with us, Professor. We now move on, viewers, to give you some more information coming in. Russian forces have repeatedly struck a key bridge on the Dnieper River in southern Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say the bridge near the village of Mayaki was hit at least 5 times since Thursday. President Zelensky says Russia is trying to cut Ukraine from the Black Sea. The attack followed intensified airstrikes on ports, energy sites, and transport routes in the Odessa region. The damaged bridge is the main western route to Moldova. Officials say it carries about 40% of Ukraine's fuel supplies. The bridge is now out of service. Let's track some news in connection to the Epstein files that have been made public on the US Department of Justice website. With the release of the first batch of Epstein files, the late sex offender's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell's background has been highlighted again. Robert Maxwell, the father of Ghislaine, was a powerful British media tycoon who was long suspected of working with Israeli intelligence Mossad. Multiple journalists, former intelligence officials, and whistleblowers alleged that Maxwell acted as a conduit between Mossad and Western political and business elites. Central to these claims was a Promise software scandal in which a US government program was allegedly modified with an Israeli backdoor and sold worldwide, allowing intelligence access to sensitive systems. Former Israeli spy Ari Ben Menash claimed Maxwell was the key international salesman of this technology. British intelligence reportedly viewed him as a double or even triple agent with links to Mossad, MI6, and the KGB. While never officially proven, Maxwell received a state funeral in Israel attended by senior intelligence figures, further fueling suspicions about his covert role. And moving on, viewers, the United States military has been seen operating in Puerto Rico with the US Air Force C-17 Globemaster III aircraft taking off from the Mercedita Airport in Ponce. Separately, a US Navy-guided missile destroyer, the USS Thomas Hudner, departed from the Port of the Americas on Puerto Rico's southern coast. This comes as US forces interdicted and seized a second oil tanker identified as the Panama-flagged Centuries in international waters off the coast of Venezuela. Meanwhile, Argentina's President Javier Milei has praised US President Donald Trump's pressure campaign on Venezuela and to free the Venezuelan people. Let's listen in to what Javier Milei had to say.
Consigo. La Argentina saluda la presión de los Estados Unidos y Donald Trump para liberar al pueblo venezolano. El tiempo de tener un acercamiento tímido en esta materia.
All right, and now request Professor Popovsky to join us back in the discussion here. Professor, thank you for continuing to stay with us. We're learning, we're seeing time and again how Trump is trying to build up, his forces in the Caribbean to tackle Venezuela and Maduro specifically. But do you think the key challenge in countering Trump in the Caribbean is the fissure that is among the Latin American nations? While Brazil is warning Trump against, over his actions on Venezuela, we see Argentina now taking the Trump side.
You're right. It's a very complex situation. And it's really interesting also from the point of international law, because those acts to seize oil tankers are illegal in international law. Countries should know that. The explanation given by the Trump administration is that they try to prevent the funding of terrorist activities coming from Venezuela, very vague and not consistent as such. And here comes the opinions. They are divided, as you correctly pointed. Some countries are against the United States' robust military actions in the Caribbean, but some countries prefer to see those as a way to put pressure on the president of Venezuela, Maduro, to accept some changes, including to democracy, because he's obviously a dictator, obviously somebody who doesn't respect the rule of law, human rights, democracy, and all of that. But to remove a dictator like Maduro, the action should also be with compliance with international law. So somehow here both sides have some points to say. Those who support the US actions, that they are aimed at the removal of a dictator. On another hand, those actions should also be, as I said, in compliance with international law. They should not violate law when you try to do something. You may try to do